Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's midday Western U.S. regional forecast video brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. I'm going to start off here with a graphic put together by Robert Rode. He has a PhD in physics, and he's a well-known climate scientist. And one of the things he produced for us here was a look at 2013 through 2018, the average number of critical fire warnings issued by the Storm Prediction Center here for California versus what we've had through October 29th here in 2019. And certainly what started off to be what looked like a great year. We had great reservoir health across the western United States. Things looked very green early. We've turned over to this very, very volatile pattern recently that has made the situation so much worse for California. We need to be talking about that because we still have widespread red flag warnings, and that kind of goes over the top of all of our other warnings about fire risk, about so many things. That red flag warning kind of captures it all. So as the United States is dealing with this highly amplified pattern that is causing quite a bit of issue here that's beginning out in the western United States, we're going to focus in on what we're expecting to see here over the coming days. And then we'll be talking about at the end of this video if there's any sort of a shift in the long range thinking about how this pattern is evolving, because while we are dry and very windy, with humidities in some parts of California getting down at below 5%, we need to understand what our temperature patterns are doing, what precipitation is doing. But focusing in on that fire threat, we're looking at here just the next 2 days. So this is Tuesday over here on the left, and I have Wednesday over here on the right. And what we're looking at is from the Storm Prediction Center where they've identified the elevated, critical, and extreme fire risk. And you can see that it is quite widespread across the state of California here. So getting into some of the details about this, why are we seeing this? Well, that highly amplified jet stream pattern today and again tomorrow is going to be producing anomalously high atmospheric pressure sitting over the Intermountain West. Now, if you just think about how high pressure systems work, air leaves them, so it comes out and it turns to the right and does something like this, okay? And so as the air evacuates the central high pressure center there at the surface, well, in this case, it is producing a wind from the east going across our western part of the United States. And you can see it best by looking at the wind field here. This is later in the day today. So what we're noticing is that high pressure center sitting somewhere right in through here, and look at the air kind of coming out of this. You know, you can see the effect. Now, it's a little bit masked by the position of the mountains. Of course, the mountains are going to dictate which way that wind eventually gets funneled, but you can see the influence of that high pressure. And so for a lot of us on the western side of the United States to have a ridge somewhere here near southern Idaho or over parts of Nevada or over Utah, we know that that particular flow pattern is one that gives us the highest chance of having these winds that come from the east over the mountains, out of the Intermountain West, out of the Great Basin, out of the desert, which is already dry air, and as it descends the mountains here along the west coast of the United States, heading toward the Pacific Ocean, it does so in a very, very dry manner. Now, just a snapshot here of what winds are looking like mid-morning this morning in the Pacific Northwest first. We're still dealing with another very, very windy day here. You can see the streamlines telling you the direction the winds are going, right? They're certainly getting away from that high-pressure center, and they may be gusty today throughout the day in the northwest, especially as they run over the top of the Cascade Mountains here, coming down slope, maybe 20 to 40 mile an hour wind gusts here. Through the Snake River Valley, also a very windy day. Things calm down in the northwest first, but let me take you down to California and show you how things evolve throughout the next couple of days. So we're watching here again wind gusts, and we notice that by this afternoon, this evening, parts of Northern California where our Kincaid fire is still going, up in this area, we might see wind gusts here 20 to 40 miles an hour. Getting through parts of the San Joaquin Valley, a little bit less windy, but then you get down here into the LA Basin and the San Gabriel Mountains and the surrounding area, and again we see that wind coming over the mountains, very, very strong here, 30 to 40 miles an hour. Now, as we continue to press play, look at how windy things get into the early morning on Wednesday. So overnight Wednesday into early morning, very, very windy down here, and that's why you saw the critical fire threat going all the way to extreme fire threat down here throughout the day on Wednesday in Southern California. So we just have to continue to be careful in this area due to these strong winds we're anticipating over the next 48 hours or so. The same time period, look at our relative humidities. I'm showing you where they bottom out late in the day on Tuesday night and then on Wednesday night here, where we do see widespread single digits into the lower teens in terms of relative humidity. So this is just adding another day day of extremely high evapotranspiration rates for this time of year, and that windy conditions, the very dry air is just going to continue to keep our fire threat not just elevated, but in the critical and extreme phases here. So this is just not going away here in the near term. Now, when we animate this next image, I want you to see what's going on here. So before I do, what you notice is that the jet stream pattern is going to follow something like this, okay? And that top arrow here is the polar branch of the jet stream. That's this feature. And this bottom arrow down here is the subtropical branch. And it is split. You can see that a piece of it goes north and a piece of it goes to the south. And that particular flow pattern, which makes things very unsteady here in the eastern half of the country in terms of weather conditions, is a very stagnant and dry pattern for the west. So you can see now that flow. And this is a pattern that we don't want to see too often in winter, because winter is our wet season. We need it to build snowpack. We need a flow pattern that comes in much more united. I'm just going to draw right over the top of this in black. We need to see a stronger Pacific jet bringing in more flow like this at times, or coming off of Hawaii coming in like this, or coming out of the Gulf of Alaska like this, to bring us up our precipitation totals that we need to be getting throughout the winter months, so that we don't start off our next growing season dry. So that's our pattern right now, but unfortunately, due to it being split, you're looking here over the next week at total accumulated precipitation. Well, what we see here is a very dry week across the western United States, just some mountain snow here overall, and other than that, maybe a little bit coming in here on the western side of the mountains here in Washington. But look at the deficits we're building up over the next week. So this is departure from normal. Here in coastal Oregon, Northern California, and Washington, we're missing out on anywhere between 1.5 and 4 inches of rainfall. That would be normal to be getting over this next 10-day time period. So that's what we're looking at here, 10-day time period, and it's very, very dry. So question I'm going to try to get to here is this changing? Is it breaking down? Well, let's just see by animating the flow of the upper levels of the atmosphere. Certainly through the weekend, that's not the case. Thankfully, we will be getting a rebound in temperatures. But as I play this forward, as long as we continue to see ridging here, that is a drier pattern for us in the western United States. But watch what happens once I get you out past the first week of the month of November. I start to notice a bit of high over low, but we see that pattern wants to break down, maybe such that by the end of the first week of November, we need to be talking about lower atmospheric pressure and lower atmospheric heights, so troughing coming into this area, and that could change the trajectory of our moisture, bringing it back into the Pacific Northwest. So now you can see the ridge in the upper levels is here, and it seems to be moving toward the east. Now, getting to this time period, yes, dry, but it looks as though a pattern breakdown could be coming, all right? So looking at week 2, let's keep on this precipitation discussion. Week 2, from the European on the right, GFS on the left. Yes, it's still drier than average, but can you see this feature here? That's what I'm going to be watching to slowly migrate toward the U.S. West Coast once we get out past, the middle and end of next week is unfortunately the time period that we're looking at here. Now let me show what I mean. Very dry air in our precipitable water animation here coming into the west for the next several days. Anything that gets close curls back out. But notice this. This is now the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. There it is. See that? That is the advertisement of the change in the pattern coming once we get through the first full week of the month of November. Okay? So I at least don't see this as being this permanent feature that we're going to have to just hang on to for a while here. What's helping it along? Well, we're going to discuss this more in our long-range update tomorrow, which is where we get into a bit more of the technical analysis. But we've seen an important feature change over here, both reflected in the wind speed over in the Indian Ocean. So if you look here, for the last couple of months, we've had this strong easterly wind. Well, pieces of it have kind of broken off here and moved over toward the international date line. That's allowed the MJO to come over here briefly into phase 2 before going right back over into the null phase. But this change that we see going on right now, maybe we reached a peak in our Indian Ocean dipole event, and that might change the behavior of the North Pacific such that week 3, look at this, week 3, we actually start to bring in wetter conditions into this area. Brand new model update here from the European suggesting that finally we break this pattern down. But again, I'm out past the 11th of the month of November here that we're seeing this change. So what about temperatures? Because we do see week 3 still hanging on to a warm bias out here in the western part of the United States. Well, what's going on with that? Let's go right now to our near-term temperature predictions. So this is coming from the National Digital Forecast Database. We have a very cold start to our day here in the Pacific Northwest. We see a lot of temperatures here in the Columbia Basin, getting into the eastern parts of Oregon, then into the Snake River Valley. Well, we're talking about temperatures that are going to be, of course, elevation dependent, but down here into the teens and 20s. Pressing forward on this, we will notice that our Wednesday morning temperatures still hang on to their cold bias. But watch the moderation that happens from Wednesday morning to Thursday morning, still cold, but moderating, toward Friday, and then into Saturday and Sunday. So you can see that beginning from the west, moving to the east, we start to moderate. It's still going to be a very cold week getting up to that point. Now I'm stepping you back because we do notice that on Wednesday morning, probably our coldest overall, we are starting to see some areas here in the Central Valley showing up with frost. Now, before we get concerned about this, I want you to know this is very elevation dependent. So we're hugging the Sierra Nevada mountains here with these below freezing temperatures that are starting to show up. So this is elevation dependent frost down here. But we see that again in the morning on Thursday. And then as we moderate toward the end of the week in California, that goes away. But still a lot of lows here in the 40s and 50s in the Central Valley of California. So bigger picture here, over the next 5 days, what are our temperature patterns doing? Yes, overall hanging on to the cooler bias. But days 6 through 10, that's when the pattern, notice that broader ridge is in place here. Cutoff low sitting here, but broader ridge in place, warming up compared to average into the 6 to 10 day. That seems to be showing up also in the 11 to 15 day time period as well, where much of this region could be seeing slightly above average temperatures, while parts of the Pacific Northwest hanging on to some cooler weather, especially parts of Montana. And unfortunately for Montana, it's been that way for a long time. Okay, so that gives us kind of an idea of what we need to be watching here for the next couple of weeks. I'll keep a close eye on the evolution of the Pacific jet stream in the Pacific Ocean for you, and I'll report it to you every single day. So check us out here with all of our weather forecasts. Have a great rest of your week, and we will talk to you again very soon. Thank you.